All right, let's get started. We still have some people trickling in, but I think we definitely have a quorum. Thank you again for spending this time with us today. We're going to be talking about turning healthcare recruiting challenges into opportunities today. Super excited about the webinar and the panel that we have today. But before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping tips. First of all, thank you so much again for spending this time with us today. We absolutely love questions, so please feel free to hit us up with questions anytime. You can use the Q&A panel in the Zoom webinar. We'll be tracking questions throughout. We will answer some of them live, or we will answer some of them during the webinar. I might even ask some of them to our panelists, and we certainly will also keep some time at the end. So we're all about making this interactive, and also, don't hesitate to throw sort of tough questions at us. Anything that you are currently dealing with, or is an actual operational question from your own company, we'd love to take a crack at that. And lastly, this presentation, as well as the recording of this webinar today, would be shared afterwards. So don't worry about taking too many notes or screenshots. We'd rather you give us your attention and make this interactive. And with that, let's get started. I'll quickly introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. My name is Pankaj. I am one of the founders of Sense. In a second here, I'll give you guys a little overview about Sense itself for those of you who don't know Sense. But in the meantime, let me go ahead and introduce my panel who's with me today. Jenna, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves.
Hi, everybody. Jenna Jeffrey here at Sense. I actually started on the customer success team here at Sense about 3 years ago, and I'm now a solutions consultant. So I'm going to be walking you all through the various components more towards the end of the webinar on how to use the Sense platform to engage with your healthcare talent. So Valerie, I'll pass it to you.
Thanks, Jenna. Hi, everyone. My name is Valerie Vole. I started with Medix 16 years ago as a recruiter, and today I have the role of VP of our healthcare division. So I work with our company to set the vision and the strategy of our healthcare division, who we're supporting, how we're supporting our clients, and I'm really thankful to Sense for having me here today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you on. Andrew?
Thanks, Valerie. Thanks, Pankaj. Happy to be here today. My name is Andrew Lamorris. I'm the President and CEO of Medix. Later on this month, a couple of weeks actually, we'll be celebrating our 21st year of business. We're an organically grown healthcare staffing business, recently purchased by MSouth, a private equity organization that is going to support and help us continue to scale and grow our healthcare organization across the country and in different verticals. So we're really excited to be on, and thank you to Sense for having us.
Absolutely. And while you're at it, Andrew, can you just tell us a little bit more about Medix?
Yeah, Pankaj, I'm happy to. Medix, you can't really talk about Medix unless you're talking about our core purpose of positively impacting lives. I'm just coming off of our executive planning meeting where we got a chance to go to Mexico and work with an organization to paint a school and brought early Christmas gifts to some children. And I bring that up because I think that from a values perspective and a purpose perspective, that's who we are at our core. We've definitely won Best in Staffing, Talent, Customer and Internal, Inc. 5000, a bunch of awards, but we're really hanging our hat on our purpose and really going in our communities and supporting different organizations and kind of doing right by our neighbors. And that really is the vibe of Medix and who we are. We're based in Chicago, roughly 800 teammates at Medix. And we are, like I said before, we are really excited to continue this journey in expanding in other areas in healthcare as we scale.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And just on a personal note, I would say that it's been an absolute pleasure working with you and your organization for as long as we have, pretty much since Sense started. And, we just, from the sidelines and sometimes as part of your team, are just cheering for your success and your mission.
Thank you.
And on that note, I'll tell you guys a little bit more about Sense for those of you who don't know Sense or don't use Sense. We started almost exactly 7 years ago with a single mission to build the best, or at that point, the only talent engagement platform in the industry that's designed specifically for staffing. We've stayed really true to that mission so far. We now work with over 800 staffing companies. At the same time, we also took up a lot of pain initially to build a lot of integrations and middleware to make sure that we were integrating with your data in a meaningful fashion. And that proves in the pudding now. 7 of the top 10 firms by revenue use Sense today. And over a 90 of SIA's largest staffing companies. These are all companies that are over $100 million in revenue. Obviously, Medix is a part of that cohort. We also take our customers' data very seriously. We are SOC 2 Type 2 certified, which is really unusual for a company of our size, but we've gone through that certification process to make sure everybody understands how seriously we take customer data and how our people don't have access to your data. Along this journey, we've raised about $90 million in capital from some of the best investors you can hope to have, including firms like Axel Partners, Google Ventures, as well as SoftBank. So without further ado, I'm going to talk about the agenda today. So during the webinar today, we're going to present 3 pressing challenges that are facing the healthcare recruiters, the healthcare industry. And we'll take expert views from Andrew and Valerie on how the team at Medix is responding to each one of those. We'll then also take a step back and talk about how staffing firms can seize the opportunity to, to convert these challenges into actually a way to connect with more candidates, make more placements, grow their business, so on and so forth. And lastly, we're going to pass it over to Jenna, who you just heard from. She's actually going to walk us through some aspects of Sense. We won't nearly have the time to show you everything that we can do, but we'll talk about some specific AI and automation use cases that some of the best and the most engaged healthcare staffing firms use today. And finally, like I said earlier, we will have time for Q&A as well. All right, so that's our agenda. Let's get started with our first challenge. So here is the number one thing that, hopefully a lot of you are already aware of. I mean, by 2025, which is literally around the corner here, in the US alone, we think there will be a shortage of 30,000 nurse practitioners, 95,000 nursing assistants, and over 400,000 home health aides. And additionally, over the next decade, roughly 200,000 nurses are set to retire annually. So simply replacing healthcare professionals that are exiting the workforce isn't enough. We actually need an influx of new workers to provide care for baby boomers, who are obviously the largest generation now and reaching an age where most of them are going to need some sort of medical care. So given that this is a huge challenge, this is where I will focus first. And, Andrew and Val, I'll throw this out at you guys. But in talking with your healthcare clients, how worried are they about the impending talent shortage? How are you reassuring them that they'll be able to meet these staffing needs? Val?
Thanks, Pankaj. Our clients are worried. They see the statistics too. And as you said, in a nutshell, we are in the middle of a crisis, especially for nursing, and the shortage will not get better. So our clients know that simply increasing the supply of workers is not possible. So we work to talk with them specifically about upskilling talent that are a fit for their organization and engaging and retaining. Those are the most important things. We will talk about it later, but we have tools and ideas and creative solutions that we coach our clients on to upskill their workers and to retain their workers.
Got it. Yeah, and I mean, not to put too fine a point on it. That's exactly what we talk about at Sense, day on, all day long, which is it's much cheaper for you to actually retain your workers, redeploy them in subsequent positions. It decreases your cost per hire. It improves your margin. It gives you the ability to actually give them a career rather than an assignment. So yeah, I mean, that's music to my ears. But having said that, how difficult it is to recruit for healthcare roles compared to maybe say a few years ago? Are there any other factors that you believe are now contributing to the talent shortage?
Yes, I was thinking about this question, and 2 really clear factors came to mind that are newer in the last few years that make it difficult. The first one is that employment settings for healthcare workers have expanded. There are all kinds of new employment opportunities for healthcare workers that didn't exist previously. You have companies like Amazon getting into healthcare. You have more urgent care and non-acute settings coming to play because we want to lower the cost of healthcare. all of those settings are pulling from the same talent pool. So employment setting is a huge factor. And I think the second biggest factor is virtual opportunities for healthcare workers. We know it's important. We know those opportunities are very attractive, and there are healthcare organizations out there that are getting really smart about how they can offer virtual opportunities to workers. And that's a huge piece of competition. So those two factors.
But I think also the growth of life sciences, biopharma med device, they use different types of healthcare workers. You look at the technology impact on healthcare. There's all sorts of technology companies that are using healthcare workers. Mm-hmm. And behavioral health has scaled to a level where people are choosing to go a different route. So I totally agree with Valerie.
Okay, so that's awesome. I mean, not awesome in terms of we have all these challenges, but given all these challenges, like how are forward-thinking organizations like obviously Medics, how are you guys responding to the talent shortage? So what are you guys doing about it? How are you thinking about it?
Sure. I think you'll hear me talk about this a couple times today, but I think it's really important to continue to educate our clients. Our clients in healthcare are traditionally slow to respond to the market. Staffing partners, one of their biggest pieces of value they can bring is that we have the flexibility to pivot and act quickly in accordance with changing employment market. So I think we need to continue to make education the biggest priority with our clients. And when I talked about helping our clients upskill and retain talent, it's really exciting, but 2023 will mark a big year for us in building programs for our talent to upskill them. We have formal partnerships that are going to be in place with certifying and educational bodies that can take someone with the soft skills or some of the hard skills and elevate them to that next level so that they have the acumen that our client is looking for. And additionally, we call it talent creation. We have our tool, our proprietary behavioral assessment tool called MyPrint, which I am extremely passionate about. And what MyPrint does is it's a fun and engaging behavioral assessment that we offer to every talent that we work with. And we provide it as a tool to our clients to aid in their coaching and management of our talent. And what it does is it highlights the aptitudes and the behaviors of the talent in the workplace to help that client position them and get the best performance from them in their role. So when you talk about being able to identify some of the soft skills and behaviors that could make a talent a fit for a role, and on top of that, providing this assessment as a tool, a coaching tool for the management, we feel that first and foremost empowers the talent through maybe a program that we have to certify them. It empowers them to go for a position that they might not traditionally go for. And then we offer that client the tool to help get the most out of them in one of those roles that might be a stretch. The last couple of things is we are out there, we have the information around what our clients' competitors are offering.
That's right.
So we all know that pay needs to be in line and things like that. But one of the most interesting things that I've heard of is approaching, looking at your organizations, helping a client look at their organization around what schedules are they offering, what benefits are they offering, and sharing what else we're seeing in the market that's working.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, this whole idea of you got to keep educating your customers to make sure that they're not sitting in a vacuum.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention real quick, a lot of times we'll talk to different facilities and or just peers of mine about different rewards and benefits their company has. And the rewards and benefits have to be appreciated. I think that a lot of times in old businesses would just create and or say, here are your benefits and here are your rewards as a worker in a business. And I think more and more from a culture perspective, you have to go inside and talk to your people to really understand what's appreciated, what benefits they want, what makes sense to that worker.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like, Andrew, what you just touched upon was a little bit about personalization, which I think I'm a big fan of, like this idea that, you can't treat every single person or an entire group of workers, as a single unit. You just absolutely have to customize. You're talking about customizing benefits. We talk a lot about customizing communication and outreach and, meet them exactly where they live and so on and so forth, and have an omni-channel approach to how you engage with people.
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, so we're going to move on to talking about, I think, the second big challenge, which hopefully everybody in our webinar audience today agrees with, which is this huge thing, right? This high turnover. The pandemic sort of led to an unprecedented turnover in the healthcare sector. People reported high burnout, stress, mental health issues. In fact, during the last year's Omicron wave, nearly 1.7 healthcare workers left their jobs, which accounted for about 3% of the overall healthcare workforce every month. And during COVID, 3 in 10 healthcare workers considered changing their professions, specifically due to mental health issues. Now, the turnover rates are starting to settle down a little bit, but they're still pretty high. I mean, as of September, like literally just end of last quarter, the nurse vacancy rate as hospitals is about 17%. So, like 1 in 5 nurses still isn't available. Health aides and assistants have the highest turnover rate, followed by, licensed sort of vocational nurses, if you will. So I guess the question for both of you is, how does high turnover impact the recruiting for healthcare roles? Andrew, I see you smiling there, so.
Yeah, I mean, the high turnover that we're seeing today, and you can look at businesses, you can look at healthcare organizations, you can look at staffing organizations. I think one of the things that we talk about is just the initial interview process. How deep are you going in the interview to make sure that you have the right fit? It's so important to make sure that, I know that if you are a nurse and you are licensed, that's terrific. But do you have the right fit to go inside and be appreciative of the benefits and all the rewards and things that I talked about previously? The other aspect that I really think about when you're talking about turnover and you're talking about building the right kind of organizational structure, I think about the generations that are working today. You have your boomers, you have your Gen X, you have your millennials and Gen Z. You look at the boomers, boomers are kind of structured in a way to go inside of an organization and just get the work done. Clock in, clock out, just show up and do your work. No news is good news, and let's keep pushing ahead. You have Gen X, right? You have Gen X that, work-life balance and then some boundaries, but for the most part, kind of the same type of mindset. And then you go to your millennials and your Gen Z, they want to know why. Why am I working here? What is the purpose? Mental health. Is the organization I'm working for contributing to society? And there's just a deeper look at where am I going to spend my time if you're a millennial and a Gen Z person. And now you have all those generations kind of coming together, especially when you look at healthcare, because we have an aging population in a lot of our disciplines in healthcare.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is a unique point that you bring up, Andrew. Not a lot of people talk about just the various sort of generational workers we have today and how it impacts them. The other way to sort of think about, you talked about the interview process, you talked about the right fit. I guess I'll flip that around to ask, is it now important, or how important it is to sell the candidates differently? Obviously there is low morale within healthcare. They're all turning over. Clearly they've gone through a period of great stress. How do you sort of sell this differently?
Well, I think that you have to know, and I know Val will jump in on this question. I'll just add one small piece. It is so important for recruiting organizations to understand the culture and the fit. In our company, we use a methodology called top grading to hire a person. And we want to make sure that we are getting as close as possible to the right fit in our organization, right? So when we're recruiting for whether it's a doctor's office, a surgical center, healthcare organization, hospital, whatever the case may be, it is so important today more than ever before to understand that you have the right fit. Just think about it from a lab perspective, Pankaj. 70% of all medical decisions, 70% of all medical decisions are based on lab testing, right? To have turnover and not have hired the right people in the laboratory really hurts the whole facility. And so it is really key for us to understand, what is the culture of that lab? Are we finding the right person to go in? Sure, we can find a contract person to handle 3, 4, 5 months, 6 months. If it's a contract to hire person, you really need to know the culture and understand how that group kind of vibes together.
Fair enough. Well, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think similar, or as important as it is to educate a client, it's equally as important to position your recruiters to educate talent. So when we talk about the concept of selling to candidates, it first starts with educating them. And over the last 2.5 years, what the pandemic created was a price war, which limited a recruiter's ability to educate and sell a candidate. Candidates were attracted to the highest pay, and they were getting it. What we saw were healthcare roles that had never been travel and high paying roles turn into travel and high paying roles. So, but I do believe that price war and chasing the highest pay rate is part of the burnout and mental health issue that the workers experienced. So something that we're focused on when we're selling to candidates today is educating them on the shift in the market, a shift from travel short-term contracts across multiple disciplines to local long-term opportunities. Today in the industry, specific to travel nursing, hospitals are sitting at 10% of their worker population in a travel contract. Traditionally, travel contracts make up 2 to 4% of a hospital population. So the cost of labor just in that area has skyrocketed. So hospitals are getting creative and turning to strategies to attract and retain local and long-term talent. And so recruiters need to do our job to really educate talent on these opportunities, the shift in the market, and what talent get through being in a local long-term opportunity. Talent care about stability and career advancement. They care about workplace culture, and that comes with local long-term opportunities. So that would be a big part of our education today to talent.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Sorry, I hadn't even thought about this aspect that, we talk a lot about traveling nurses and people who travel all the time, but obviously that creates burnout and stress versus just looking for, localizing your talent or actually having talent that actually will stay there for a long time. So, this sort of begs the next obvious question. We've talked about the fact that there is a historic talent shortage. We all agree with that. We all know that. Then there is super high turnover. So we know that. And now I think you just couple this with the triple whammy, if you will. But at the same time, and Andrew sort of alluded to this, the talent expectations itself are shifting. So, I want to talk about, what the candidates are expecting now, because, they're a different cream of people than we were used to before. I mean, they've drastically changed their expectations over the past few years. I talk a lot about consumerization of staffing, where people expect the same behavior from a staffing company as they expect from Amazon.com, and obviously these are professionals that are super in demand. Sense actually surveyed over 1,000 job seekers and found out that obviously compensation and career advancement were the top 2 priorities. But along with that, specifically in the healthcare sector, it turns out that the talent today values all of these factors you see here: positive work conditions, mental health support, flexible scheduling, relocation options, so on and so forth. So I guess the obvious question is, how do you work with the clients today to ensure that they're offering what is important to the candidates today? We know this is what's important. We know the business hasn't changed overnight. So how are you working with your healthcare clients to ensure that they're offering these?
Mm-hmm. I've touched on most of this, but we are their eyes and ears. So a staffing company should be compiling trends and patterns of what's working to retain and engage talent and sharing that back sharing data-driven, retention-driven ideas and solutions back to their clients. I said this before. I sat in a conference recently where they talked about the demographic of clinical workers. And the type of person that sits in a healthcare role typically has a family at home, has responsibility outside of the workplace. So when does the industry start to learn that 12-hour shifts does not help that talent, does not help retain that talent? And then the other thing I said was encouraging a hospital to look at their population and understand, based on the tenure of the talent, what benefits do they need, what benefits appeal to them. And lastly, I think I'll see, so in addition to things like, again, coaching clients on what portion of training could be done virtually or what part of the job could be done virtually, we actually have our MyPrint tool where we can literally on paper show a client, this is what motivates this talent in the workplace. This is what's important to them in the workplace. Take this assessment and use it as a tool to keep this talent engaged and retained.
Yeah, and one of the things I was thinking as you were saying that, Valerie, is you can probably use automation to nurture some of these clients to make sure that you're educating them constantly about, hey, this is what we're seeing now. Just make that sort of a well-oiled machine. Partly helps with business development, but also partly helps with, this is not just one person's opinion. This is just not, Val telling me this. This is what we are seeing across a bunch of people, bunch of, customers, so on and so forth. And so, to that effect, I wanted to ask you, what role do you think technology plays here? What role does technology play in this paradigm of shifting candidate expectations that we live in today?
Sure. I'll speak briefly. So we have a proprietary platform that we call AHA, which is a way that we engage talent to show them what job openings that we have. And it just gives them a new platform to engage with us. But my focus is our success in using Sense to leverage an omni-channel approach to communicating with talent. So I think the term that keeps coming up, and Pankaj, you and I discussed this not too long ago, but providing talent with a frictionless experience in communicating with us. And in particular, provide them an opportunity to communicate with us when they can and how they want to. And so that's an opportunity that we didn't have before we started partnering with Sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. I talked about this just a few minutes ago. The behavior of a candidate today is very much the behavior of a consumer.
Yes.
If I want you to text me, don't email me. If I want you to email me, don't text me. If I want you to reach out during office hours, then do that. If I want you to reach out after hours, then do that. And, as a staffing company, you need to do that for tens of thousands, if not millions of candidates. And the only way you can do that is sort of, bringing in technology to help you have an omni-channel approach, have reminders automatically set up for recruiters on what they need to do, have recruiters automatically talk to people that are your highest value candidates. And nowhere does this ring truer than the healthcare industry, because I talk about this all the time. During the pandemic, we got so many companies telling us that their healthcare workers were literally getting a break at midnight. That's the only time they could look for a job, but obviously they didn't have a recruiter to talk to. So instead they could talk to a chatbot. They could talk to a chatbot and go, this is the amount of money that I want. Here is the location that I've been willing to work in. Here are my credentials. Get the pre-screening information out. So a recruiter goes, you're absolutely something, that I want to talk to, somebody that I want to talk to. And then they also get to pick and choose the exact time when they can talk to a recruiter. So if they feel like, hey, on Thursday, I can take a 15-minute break at 3:00, that's when I'll talk to you. You can schedule all of that within 45 seconds, and technology is actually enabling that.
And Pankaj, from a technology perspective, from a C-level view, from a macro level, I think about organizations, staffing organizations. I think it's really important for you to have a strategy map around technology. Understand What are you going to buy? What are you going to build? What are you going to lease?
That's
One
right.
of those two things. And there's got to be a tech person sitting at the table helping you make decisions. One of the mistakes that we've made over the years, and we are currently looking to hire, a senior vice president and or a CIO type person to help us a little bit more, because technology has become so much more important than ever before. And for us, we've made the mistakes on you look at buy, build, or lease, and you know what you want to do, but sometimes you don't necessarily need to go out and buy something or build something.
That's right.
To be able to sit down and think about, what is my job? My job is staffing and recruiting. Okay, well, a company like Sense can make it really easy. Or some of our other vendors that we work with make it really easy for us to be able to do the job that we're supposed to be doing. So I think it's really important. And that's one thing I've talked to you about, because I think it's important to have a stated and or thought through strategy map to say, hey, Pankaj, here's like what we're looking to do. Can you help us in any of these areas? And so
yeah,
I think that's very important also.
Absolutely. I think the point you're making is technology now is as high of a CEO priority than either recruiting or delivery used to be back in the day. But this is exactly what makes your recruiting and delivery world class. So okay, awesome. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I think what would be helpful for our audience is to now talk about what are the opportunities here. I mean, so there are a bunch of challenges. We get that. What are some opportunities? How is the team at Medix approaching recruiting healthcare talent? And I know you guys have talked about a lot of different tactics here already. So we'll ad-lib this and we'll freeform this just for the benefit of our audience. But I guess the kind of questions I have is, what are some of the tactics you're using? What are some of the tactics you use to change your approach? How are you demonstrating value to healthcare clients? What qualities do you look for when you're evaluating technology partners? So I'll let you guys ad-lib on any part of that. But essentially, where I'm going with this is leave our people with some tips and tricks on what a successful organization like you are doing.
I can jump in, Pankaj. I think the word that comes to mind is expertise in the recruiting ranks and the sales ranks. So when we talk about engaging with in-demand healthcare talent, when we talk about selling to clients, we're no longer able to throw a flashy pay rate at talent. Instead, we need to tell them, we're in your corner, we're going to give you information, and we're going to be the expert that you need in your job search. We also have to get aggressive and creative in where we are finding talent. It's no longer about posting a job online and they come to you. It's brutal out there. So I think a staffing firm has to be really creative and aggressive with how they're touching and reaching talent. And at Medix, we have really created and solidified our products, which means we have product leaders whose jobs are to train and equip salespeople and recruiters with industry information and data in their product. And that has really allowed us to step up and provide value to both talent and clients. And the other thing we're doing is we're focusing on data. So as you said previously, clients want data.
Yep.
And so I love that you connected, how do we automate and use Sense to give that data and to show them the data-driven decisions that we're making. And then the last thing is, I'll touch on it again. We are a huge believer in the Net Promoter Score. We use that very religiously. And we know that if a talent has a good experience engaging with us, they're likely to have a better experience with our client and perform well and be retained with our client. So I think it's, again, really important to figure out how to give them a phenomenal experience working with you and to maintain that experience as they're working on site with your client.
Awesome. And Val, we just got a question in the chat panel that said, can you elaborate on digitizing recruitment processes? And I'll quickly take that in the interest of time. So I think what you're asking is what Sense is all about. The whole idea is, anytime any recruiter is doing anything more than 3 or 4 times, that there is an opportunity to automate it. You could take hundreds of different processes, and when we say digitizing, we basically mean automating it. So if you have a process where you're asking everybody for, hey, how's your first day at the end of everybody's first day, you can automate that. It'll still go out as the message from the recruiter. It'll actually look more beautiful than the message your recruiter is sending today. It might have your company's logo. It might have your company's background. It might look very consistent. Every single person is going to ask it the same exact way. If you're asking for exit surveys, if you're sending a welcome message from the CEO, if you're asking for referrals, if you're asking for net promoter score, and we can keep going on and on. I've just taken some examples that are meant for people who are already on assignment. You can certainly use this during your recruiting process. But essentially, this idea that you can automate, digitize anything that is a repetitive process today. All right, so switching gears here a little bit, first of all, Andrew, Val, thank you so much. This is absolutely fantastic. Always appreciate your deep insights. And I think even for our audience, there is nothing better than learning from people who are right in the trenches, but at the same time, you're a large organization. You see a large cross-section of what the country's healthcare system is doing. So you can speak to obviously a lot of those. And I'll encourage our audience, if you think of more questions for Andrew and Valerie, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box, and we'll take them in the last 5 minutes or so. But for the moment, I'm going to pass this over to Jenna, who's going to walk us through how, medics and some of the other forward-thinking healthcare agencies are using Sense to engage healthcare talent. And a lot of this is going to be stuff that hopefully you can use right away, you can use today. So, certainly stick on and ask us questions. Jenna, over to you.
Perfect. So I'm going to hop into my screen share here. All right, so this should be sharing here. So I'm going to walk through the various products of Sense, and I'm going to start here with our Sense messaging. So this is our two-way texting component of Sense that really allows your healthcare recruiters that full visibility into the communication strategy that's being executed. And this is what things would look like from an ATS perspective, since it sits right on top of here and it integrates seamlessly with your applicant tracking system. This is just one of the various ATSs that we do integrate with. But you can see here, so as I pull up this conversation with Jim Hopper, he's a candidate, you'll see that your healthcare recruiters are going to have that full insight into everything that's going on with that candidate. So it does sit tightly integrated with your ATS, where most of your recruiters' time is spent. So I can see here that Jim, he just interviewed with Shawshank Prison. He just started a placement, maybe he ended a placement, but also what other recruiters are doing. So this recruiter, also sent communication to that candidate from a different phone number. So this will really help with preventing that duplicative efforts. We don't want your recruiters stepping on each other's toes, but also more importantly, we don't want to fatigue your candidate. So I can easily see what those other recruiters are texting. I can open up their conversation, make sure that I'm not going to fatigue that candidate. You'll also notice that within this Chrome extension here, all of that automation is going to be built into the extension. So right in that user interface, we're sending those automated texts on behalf of your recruiters so they can see full visibility in those green buttons. So from here with texting, I can send one-to-one, but I can also send a broadcast. So if I need to get a lot of text out very quickly, I can easily pull up a list of candidates. I can grab all the numbers from my screen and add them to my broadcast. So this feature of grabbing the numbers from your screen, it's really going to lead to more productivity and efficiency gains because we're going to create that super fast interaction with your candidates, removing those hurdles from your healthcare recruiters and ultimately leading to that shorter time to fill. So that's just very high level of our Sense messaging product here. So I am going to pivot into our chatbot next. So this is our Sense chatbot, and the Sense chatbot is going to be a very powerful tool because keep in mind, you can really interact at any point with your candidates, or if you want to interact with your contacts in addition to your candidates. So you're probably familiar with chatbots in more of that traditional sense where it sits on your website, interacts with candidates as they come through. We can mirror that approach. That's going to be with our inbound sourcing chatbot to the right. This is also an option to set up some text to apply. So text jobs to this number, or even a QR code. But you'll also notice that on the left here, we also have outbound chatbots. So think of it as we're reaching out to people on purpose, we're communicating in more of a pointed way. And that can be a couple different routes, but we do have this first example here, which would be our database enrichment. So this would be interacting with all those people that already exist in your database, but maybe they're dormant or stagnant and they haven't really been interacted with in quite some time. So this is going to be going out, gathering information, and also hunting for any of the information that you're lacking. So cleaning up your data so it's more reliable and making sure it's all being dropped back into your applicant tracking system. Approach number 2 is going to be in the middle of my screen. So that's our pre-screening chatbot. So that's in relation to, let's say Wendy just applied to an LPN position in Chicago, and I want to pre-screen her with certain knockout questions so that my healthcare recruiting team doesn't have to spend all of that extra time screening that person out. And instead, your recruiters can actually come in the next day with people that are meeting that certain criteria, already pre-screened, served up on a silver platter, and scheduled for that interview right on their calendar. So the first example that I have for you, I'm going to turn off my Chrome extension. This is going to be our inbound sourcing chatbot. So I can easily come in here and get the answers that I need 24/7. So for example, if I want to type out, do you have a referral bonus? At any point in our chatbots, I can ask a question. It will provide me that answer. We do have that machine learning built in here as well. So it's going to ask me, hey, was this helpful? Thumbs up, thumbs down. But some of the alternative paths that you'll see here, maybe I want to upload my resume or submit my profile, or maybe I do have a referral in mind and I want to upload my referral here, or I'm looking for a job. So I can click here. These are all customizable. So the dialogue you're seeing are just best practices, some of the many ways our clients are using, but of course they can be your own verbiage. So it's going to ask me, great, are you ready to start? I'm going to say, yep, sure thing. And then we'll go into information gathering questions. So what's your full name? Maybe what's your phone number? And as I'm entering this information, we do have that data verification. So you'll see here, it just kicked in, says, hey, thanks, this is what I've got. If at any point I'm typing too fast or I do any typos, it does know to kick in to say, hey, I didn't quite understand that. Can you please provide a valid zip code? So we'll make sure that all of the data we're collecting for you is in the proper structure. We can also start to incorporate our job matching technology. So Sense Discover here. So it's going to ask me, what industries are you currently looking to work in? Or, what job titles are you interested in? So from here, this is just to show you what it can do. So it's going to say, hey, by the way, here's a couple matches that we found for you. So I can say, great, registered nurse, or any other positions that it did find that I'm a good match for. You'll also see down here, we can incorporate our meetings feature, which is our calendar feature at any point in any of those chatbots and also any of our products. So if you did want to point certain people, they can easily book time with your team, either a group of recruiters or a particular recruiter, or depending on the job order, we can always point them to that calendar. But let's say, I did apply to that registered nurse position. That's when the pre-screening chatbot will trigger automatically. So we can really start to ease that burden of your healthcare recruiters. So this is an example of a text that was sent out. Your chatbots can be text or email, combination of both. But this one in particular, it is going to allow you to really provide your candidates that positive reinforcement as they're applying. So faster evaluation experience that's going to make you superior with your brand compared to your competition. So it introduces itself. I can say, yep, I can say, sure. It has that natural language processing. So I can do thumbs up emojis. I don't have to stick to the specific script here. But the idea here is we do have an estimation of how long it's going to take. So I know what I'm getting myself into. These are going to be those knockout questions. So maybe like, what states are you licensed in? I can do a couple if I need to. Do you have any hits on your nursing license? If there are any knockout questions at any point I'm not qualified, the chatbot is smart enough to point me to maybe a gentle rejection. And we can say, hey, maybe you're not the best fit for this particular role, but here's 3 more that are tailored to your profile. But in this case, looks like I'm still a good fit. So we can ask certifications, preferred shift length. And again, this is really going to be customizable to what you want to ask. But as I get down here, if I'm still a good fit, it does ask me to confirm it looks good. So at any point, if I need to modify my answer, I can easily go back and change that. Now it's going to show me to say, hey, looks like you're a great fit. So I passed your knockout questions. I'm pre-screened. The next step is to set up some time with your recruitment team. So me as that candidate, I can easily say, great, let's take a look at the calendar. And this is where you can point them to, again, a group of recruiters, if there's a round robin approach, depending on the location or the job ID or the type of jobs that you're recruiting for. And I can easily see when they're available and confirm that meeting. So this will be booked on both calendars, and we're going to send those reminders as well. So we'll text them, we'll email them to make sure that everybody is aware of that meeting.
Yeah, there are 2 things I'll just jump in with. So one of the things that Jenna said that is super important is oftentimes a candidate would apply to a position that they're not the best fit for without knowing that there are dozens of other positions in the organization that they are a good fit for. And oftentimes that the recruiter that the candidate applies to, that's the only recruiter looking at this candidate. They only have visibility into the 5, 10, 15, 20 jobs that they're working on, but not the hundreds of other jobs, which is really where job matching comes into play. And we can instantly go, hey, maybe not the best fit for this, but look here, and we've got like 5 more opportunities that you are a good fit for. And then secondly, I wanted to answer a question somebody just asked in Q&A. Is Sense appropriate for small healthcare staffing companies? I'm looking for ways to build as much automation as possible before growing the team. And I could not answer this more vehemently by saying yes. The whole idea behind Sense is that you get a democratized automation platform. You get to do with Sense as a small company what a $20 billion company gets to do with Sense. There is nothing different in the platform that Adecco is going to use versus the platform that a small shop with 20 recruiters or 20 contractors is going to use. But you can absolutely automate every single thing within your process without having to hire additional people to do that. So for smaller companies, the ROI is even more immediate, because when you're a small company, just a little change in process might mean, oh, you need to hire another recruiter or a sourcer or an accounting person or a salesperson, but you can hold off as long as you're able to automate that and just keep giving your people more productivity. Jenna, back to you.
Awesome. That's great. So, another thing just to note here is on average, we are seeing that candidates are applying to about 11 jobs simultaneously at any given time. So, maybe they're applying late at night or odd hours. So with that 24/7 recruiting chatbot, you're going to differentiate your process by interacting with your healthcare candidates faster with the use of the chatbots, but also that experience is going to stand out. So just to recap, your candidates, they will have that ability to get pre-screened, answering any follow-up questions, and then also scheduling time with the members of your team before they've applied to another role or your competition reaches out. So that's the quick recap of our chatbot. I'm going to pivot into our Engage platform here. So this is going to be our Sense Engage platform, and this is where all of our journeys and automations are set up. So when we're talking about things like automatic surveys, emails, automatic text messages, chatbots, job matching, this is really that backbone of the system where everything is set up. And each of these journeys are going to consist of that omni-channel approach. So we're going to create more of those meaningful interactions. And you'll notice on my screen here, I do have very specific healthcare journeys. So starting with maybe a marketing campaign. So this can be geared towards things like client expansion, client newsletters, marketing content, lead nurturing. And then we get down here towards things like state licensure expirations. So, hey, candidate, friendly reminder that your license is expiring on this date. or credentialing specific reminders to say, hey, 30, 60, 90 days before they're set to expire, we want to help you maintain their compliance. And then we get down here to passive to active journeys. So re-engagement campaigns that are going to be automatically mining your database for you to bring that relevant talent to the top of the funnel. Then things like reference checks, on assignment, shift assignments. So really helping with that attrition or people falling off, having that continuous engagement with those check-ins throughout their entire assignment. So things like, first day reminders or arrival instructions or end of day surveys. Valerie was mentioning net promoter score surveys or asking if they have referrals. So making sure we're really staying in front of that. And then we get towards journeys that are more geared towards the end of their assignment. So we'll see here things like travel renewal or redeployment. So making sure we're sending something before their end date to really get ahead of it and have that healthcare talent packaged up in a bow, ready to go on their next assignment. Or maybe post-assignment check-ins, alumni reach outs. So we're really going to interact many, many times throughout that entire life cycle. One other quick thing to point out here is we can also start to incorporate our marketing grade email editor. So we can start to embed different images, different content, very easy to use. We can do videos, what's your culture, your values, why should they want to work with you, maybe a survey and social media. So these journeys, they're really an extension of the healthcare recruiting team. So we want to give them that time back in their day so they can go focus on other projects and more of those revenue-driven activities. So lastly, just our analytics here. So this is going to be how we're able to track what's going on. So we can really determine the success of your outreach efforts. Also, where we can take the data that we're collecting and spin that into valuable resources that can really help change the way an organization operates. So things like, how are your delivery rates? How are your emails performing? Your texts performing? Are things converting? Are we seeing drop off? Are we seeing bounces? Are people unsubscribing? So really that full viewpoint. But also we want to view that return on your investment. So things like placement attribution. So we want to ensure they're able to see how many influence placements did we help you make, as well as time saved, trends, active placements, month over month, week over week, who's starting versus ending, how long is it taking your team to redeploy, average length of assignment, people reach their sends. So any of these can be granular on a per journey basis, on a per event basis, but the analytics are going to be extremely powerful. So that was a very high level overview of the various Sense products, but hopefully that gave you a better idea of how we can really help engage with your healthcare talent. I'm happy to answer any other additional questions that come up, but with that, I'll pass it back over to you, Pankaj.
Yeah, Jenna, thanks a lot. And I was going to tell our audience that we could have spent an entire hour talking about just the Sense analytics. But just to recap, I think what Jenna went through really quickly is 6 different products that Sense has today. Engage is our basic automation platform. That's the backbone of of everything. You saw messaging, which is text messaging. You saw the chatbot. You also saw the ability for us to do scheduling, which can also be used separately. You saw Discover, which is our job matching platform. And the only thing we didn't talk about was our referrals platform, which is exactly what it sounds like. It automatically tracks referrals, so on and so forth. But what's also the beauty of this is on how everything just works seamlessly together. You cannot tell that you're going from one product to the other, so on and so forth. But it's one single system. It's a single platform of engagement. And hopefully we can absolutely turbocharge not only your recruiting, but also your candidate experience and your engagement experience. All right. So with that, we're at the last 3-4 minutes, so we'll take a few questions. Jenna, if you flip on to the next slide. Firstly, here is everybody's email who was on the panel today. Andrew and Valerie graciously asked us to share this with you. So if you have any questions directly for medics, or if you have any questions around technology where they can help, and if you want to reach out to them directly, you can do that. If you have any questions around Sense, you can obviously reach out to Jenna and I. We'll start by answering the one question that we did get in the chat, in the Q&A panel during the webinar. so we'll start there. Essentially, well, this is a question for you. I think you were talking about creative ways of finding talent, and somebody asked, hey, when it comes to creative ways of finding talent, can you give us some examples of what is working? So we'll throw that at you.
Sure. I think I'll start my answer with more of a necessity rather than getting creative, which is a necessity in order to attract talent is to ensure that your company has a solid brand awareness strategy. And Medics, what we're focused on is how do we create brand awareness, attract talent to us? Maybe we manage that through Sense by providing value to the talent. Blogs, webinars, workshops. We have a scholarship program where we assist talent in their education and careers. So I think that's where you start. The necessity is brand awareness so that you're attracting talent. Where the creativity comes in is looking for different ways to reach talent through the underground, like all of the social media groups that exist between certain clinical skill sets. Everybody's ready to be back in person. So finding events where that talent will be to create brand awareness and reach them. And then lastly, where the creativity really comes into play is doing your job to upskill talent, understanding what skills, what experience that you can recommend to clients to upskill. Where do you find that talent, and what are those backgrounds that you can recommend to clients? So that would be the real creativity when it comes to finding and attracting talent.
Awesome. Thank you. I think we might have just time for one or two more questions. We got another one that, Val is probably back at you again. And I know you've already talked about this, so feel free to be brief, but somebody asked, how has Sense helped you with things like increasing placements or recruiter productivity?
Just in a nutshell, it has significantly increased recruiter capacity. As Andrew said, there are certain interactions with talent that don't necessarily have to happen reactively and live. And so the impact to a recruiter's capacity and the ability to make them efficient and still have meaningful interaction with talent through the Sense tool, that is my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, and I'll go back to your question before, Pankaj, of, if I was a smaller company, is it too early, or should I start doing this now? I wish I could go back. We're going to be 21 years old. I mean, if I had a strategy map today that I could automate as much as possible, right, I think that is actually the best way to scale today. So,
well, that's the great way to end this thing. We're 10 seconds from 12 o'clock Pacific here. Thank you so much, Andrew and Valerie. We could not thank you enough for sharing your insights. I think this is invaluable for our audience. Thank you, Jenna, for walking us through the platform. And thank you, everybody, for spending this time with us. We will absolutely distribute the recording as well as this presentation. And feel free to reach out to any of the four of us if you have any additional questions. But with that, have a good afternoon. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you so much.